The rhythm of healing, the OCTAVES Method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The OCTAVES Method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5 of the Trauma and Social Work Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with my co-host, Tonya Octave, and today we have a lot of important information to dive into. But before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and let Tonya tell a little bit more about herself and what this podcast is about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Octave, and we are going into Season 5 of Trauma and Social Work Podcast, where we will be discussing and diving deep into my book called Heal the Mind, 7 Strategies Towards Mental Wellness, Happiness, and Success, Exploring Trauma, Mental Wellness, and Ways to Live a More Balanced Life. And before we begin, just a simple reminder that this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended for medical, psychological, mental health, or legal advice. Although I'm a licensed professional, this is not a formal type of treatment. We may talk about things like hypnosis and meditation and things that we would do in a therapeutic, from a therapeutic perspective, but it's not a form of treatment. For individual questions about your wellness, your happiness, and your success, please seek out a professional. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, do call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.
Great. Awesome. That was amazing. So with that being said, I want to make sure I tell the audience, if you haven't already, follow this page on Spotify, YouTube, and any other platforms we post episodes on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any upcoming episodes in the future. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 3 of the podcast. This is the Mental Health and Trauma Podcast. I am KJ Alexander here with Tonya Octave, and we have a lot of important information we want to get into today, and hopefully you guys can get a lot of value from this episode. So today we want to talk about a little meditation and mindfulness and some different techniques and practices people can use to go throughout their day if you're having any trouble with anxiety or you're feeling a mental blockage. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Tonya.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to continue reading from the book Heal Thy Mind and then offer some commentary and then an exchange of dialogue with that. So, this section is about meditation. Psychological growth is accomplished because the mind is controlled, the thoughts are controlled, the intellect is strong, and internal harmony is the outcome. It needs to be consistent and persistent with practice. And there are two forms of meditation. They are known as the formal and informal approaches. And here are some methods of meditation I use with patients. One of them will be guided imagery or guided meditation. Using my voice and based on your underlying needs, I will guide you to a place where you can achieve a deeply relaxed, calm, and meditative state. I may use images and visualizations to bring you towards peacefulness, as this allows your mind to organize and imagine a place and a reference point. It can also serve as an anchor. It helps to control the thoughts and keep your mind active so it does not wander. When there are many traumas, agitations in the mind, or uncontrolled or racing thoughts, imagery can add structure to the mind to support this calming state. It is a good beginner practice and can be beneficial if done with a trained professional. Guided meditation includes using the five senses, focusing on sight, taste, touch, smell, and hearing. And it helps to change one's perceptions. Connecting with your inner senses and using visualizations can help implement healthy thinking. So when I think about meditation and the guided imagery part of it, I get a little curious about young people in terms of like their practice with meditation. What has been your experience with meditation? Have you ever dabbled in it? What was that like for you if you did?
Yeah, so I would say I started getting into meditation probably around mid to early 20s. Really basic. Just for me, it was more so just about sitting in a quiet place and giving myself time to just think and process in silence. But I know a lot of people usually in their daily lives, they're so busy and there's so much noise, people don't give themselves time to just sit in silence and meditate. So for me, it wasn't so much about looking for a benefit. It was more just for about the practice of sitting in silence. And then as I started to get a little bit older to where pretty much I am now I look at it more like a reset and kind of just a way to compartmentalize, if I'm saying that right, my thoughts and whatever I was going through that day or that week. So yeah, for me, I think it's very necessary because, well, for one, if I don't meditate, then I'm going to have a lot of fluttered thoughts and a lot of clutter and not really a lot of mental clarity. So it's almost something, I look at it kind of like stretching before a workout. So if you don't stretch before a workout, you're liable to develop an injury or something like that. So I definitely would recommend meditation as if it was stretching for a workout.
Cool. I really like that. It's like stretching your mind versus we can make that analogy in terms of stretching our body before we do like an exercise if we're going to work with our muscles or do cardio to kind of to prevent injury, right? And your idea is like, let's stretch our mind. Let's reach a capacity so that maybe that capacity gets bigger and bigger. And the lovely part of that was like part of that journey wasn't necessarily like diving straight into like maybe a structured formal process of meditation, but like maybe it was just learning to sit, learning to be still, learning to silence the mind, to quiet the mind. And then that made then it seems like the internal benefits were helpful, so it then encouraged you to kind of move maybe to a more formal practice, still informal but maybe a little bit more formalized in that way. When I think
Yeah.
of guided imagery, I think that one of the reasons why I suggest people to do that when they're first starting, because there's so many agitations in the mind that it can have the mind be set and goal directed. So if I know that I am going to, let's say, a forest. So let me give you an example. Imagine, I
Okay.
would always say, like, making sure your feet are on the floor and your back is straight, or if you're lying down, your hands are by your side. And, I say take a couple of breaths just to settle into the motion. And then the guided part would be imagine being in this forest. And it's soft and earthly. And that every time you step, there's like this cushion sensation. There's a whisper of the trees, a breeze against your skin. And take another breath and really start to feel that sense of immersing your body into this forest. You might feel cool and crisp air, just filling your lungs as you inhale. And as you exhale, you're releasing all the stress. And as you walk down this path, maybe you see a little flittering sunlight coming out. And you see maybe some golden patches along the path. And every step you take, maybe there's just a little crunch. And I wonder how that would feel for you in this moment as you allow yourself and your mind to be free, immersing yourself into this scenery, into this visual representation of what may be going on in your mind. So this is kind of like a little example of what I would do if I were to kind of work with someone in terms of really trying to use imagery to calm the mind, calm the body, practice stillness. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
No, I see that seems like a very effective strategy for most people. So I guess my next question will be kind of the other side of that. So instead of effective strategies, what do you think, in your personal opinion, what strategies are not effective? What do you see people do in your personal life or in your work life that doesn't really work out for most people?
In terms of meditation, one of the things I see is that mind saying, well, I can't meditate because I can't shut my mind off. I'm constantly thinking. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, let's start there. Let's start with having a practice where you allow thoughts to flood. Because what you will find out is that it can only flood, those thoughts can only flood the mind for so long, then you settle into this different space. But the mind will prevent you, and if you allow the mind to prevent you, then you don't get to see the beauty beyond all the fluttering thoughts. So
Yeah.
sometimes the judgment self will come in. I can't do this. This is too difficult. Um, Individuals who are more introverted in terms of their personality can settle more into a meditative practice. Um, Individuals who are more extroverted, sometimes that practice becomes a little bit more of a struggle because of the internal dialogue. So sometimes recognizing what your personality characteristics are like, and then finding maybe a practice like that. So even with guided imagery, if I were working with a young athlete, a young professional athlete, and there's a point when you are in your workout where it can become meditative. Use that as your starting point. Meditation isn't always about sitting and going, although that's
Yeah.
great, it's not always about sitting there. But you could at nighttime, I have a really good one for athletes and performance, people who are competing in athletic competitions, where at nighttime they listen to this and they can really sit there and visualize the experience. So if they were a soccer player, they would visualize the ball. They would visualize the contact their body and different parts of their body is making against the ball. They would feel it against their skin. They would breathe the grass and the trees from the environment where they were focused. And that would add a visual representation, which is similar to guided imagery, but it is specific to that individual needs. And that can be more helpful in terms of that versus being the critical mind that might say that I can't do that this is difficult. So that would be one of the other challenges. Another challenge that I see, I don't have enough time. And I say, well, we all have 30 seconds. So
Right.
one of the easiest things is when you wake up in the morning, just practice breathing for 5 minutes. If you have young kids, maybe it's 3 minutes. It's not judging you in the process. It's allowing yourself to be conscious that when I wake up, I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to be mindful and maybe show some gratitude for the day. And then you can get up versus just rushing and getting up to start your day. And you can also do that in terms of an evening practice, turning off all electronic devices before you go to sleep, and just really sit there and then just focusing on the breath in terms of that. The third thing that I see sometimes that people struggle with is they don't know how. So they might change to a form of, they might try like an imagery, a visual imagery. And they're like, well, I can't imagine a picture and I can't see this, so this isn't helpful. Or they might say, well, I've tried transcendental meditation and it was too agitating to the mind. Or progressive relaxation, my muscles just kept twitching. So they may say that they've tried a practice, they didn't feel successful, and then that discouraged them from continuing the practice. And I said, there's thousands of practices out there. Why not give yourself the opportunity to try 1,000? You may not actually need to get to 1,000, because within that you might find the fourth one to be the one that works for you, because that's all that matters, finding the practice that works for you, that can calm you down, that gets you in the rest and digestive part of your activation system, so that you're not always in flight and fight, reacting and responding to individuals, but that it can kind of like calm you with whatever practice that might be helpful.
That's very interesting. So, just to kind of follow up on what you were saying there. So, let's say someone is going through their journey with meditation and practicing mindfulness. In your experience, what are some key indicators that a person would have to say, you know what, this is working, or what is the typical amount of time you would say a person can realistically expect some results from these practices?
I'm going to argue immediately, because for me, a meditative practice is connecting to my breath. So I simply place my hand on my heart and one on my stomach. And as I inhale, and typically when I'm doing my practices, I don't open my mouth. There's different theories about the mouth, but when I'm calming the mind and I want to stay in a rest and digestive process, I keep my mouth closed for a couple of reasons. But then as I inhale, I expand my abdomen, so it kind of like pushes out. And then when I exhale, my abdomen comes in, kind of like I'm sucking my stomach in. So if I were to do an inhale, and an exhale, I'm automatically there. Now, I've also been practicing for many years. When I was new to the practice, it may take a while to kind of really get in tune and play around with the breath. And so there's this immediate thing, and then you have to be aware of what your mind is trying to tell you about the expectation. If the mind says, I'm going to try meditation because I'm stressed out, and at the end of the meditation, I'm still stressed out, it must not be working. That's a cognitive error. It's working, it's what was your expectation, right? And so maybe if it's the first time, like the first time you learned to tie a shoe, you probably didn't get it right. The first time you learned how to multiply in double digits, you probably didn't get it right. And so it required some practice. And that's one of the things that I find is that people get discouraged initially, and then they don't want to continue it as a practice. You can get immediate results. Controlling the breath, slowing the breath down actually extends the ability to have the heart rate variability, which means the higher your heart rate variability is, the less that your body is working in terms of a fight or flight response or reaction. The other part is it automatically will start to slow you down. you can notice that there are certain things that you could even do with your breath to speed it up. So if you were getting ready to, you needed to like pump yourself up, let's say you're going to go do a performances and stuff like that, there are breaths that you can do to get your body more energy and flowing to help that. So working on the breath and controlling it can kind of help slow it down in terms of that.
Okay. Yeah, that's all great stuff, and I think that people definitely should start applying these practices if they haven't already. And so let's just back up a little bit here. So we talked a lot about internal thoughts and people may be dealing with anxiety or a lot of self doubt. So, in your opinion, what are ways that someone can start to develop that balanced internal dialogue with themselves in order to be more compassionate towards themselves and be more positive overall?
Well, I think engaging in, like you said, that compassion, that self-compassion exercises, things that are going to cultivate kindness and forgiveness towards yourself. I talk about
Okay.
this in terms of the OCTAVES method, the S for socialize, and relationships. And relationships tend to cause us a lot of distress. This particular part of the book really talks about the relationship with the self and self-care beyond um, getting massages and fingernails or or getting your nails and toes done or your hair done or reading a good book. It's beyond that. It's really learning who you are and how you want to show up in the world. So practicing self-compassion, having realistic expectations. It might be real unrealistic for me to say, if I haven't been running, that I'm going to do a marathon tomorrow without any preparation. And so, like, are we preparing for life? Are we preparing for our day? And then are we feeling agitated when things happen that we haven't prepared for? But making for sure, like, we're setting up realistic expectations. If I want to run a marathon, maybe I should start practicing a couple of months ahead of time and working on my performance, building up my cardio capacity in order to be successful. But we often don't prepare for life or even the day, even if I were to say like the day, like, so setting up realistic expectations. And then I know there's a lot of chatter out there about this inner child and talking to the inner child and having a dialogue with their young self. And I say that's great. I think we should have dialogues with our young self because there's some forgiveness that needs to be done for some of the things that have happened in the past. But what about like the dialogue for our older selves? Are we talking to ourselves? I always talk to my 120-year-old self because I want to say I'm so happy of all the choices I made that you still have no physical limitations at 120, and that is a part of the dialogue too. So even though there's some theories about like the inner child within us and the forgiveness and the compassion, there should be some dialogue about like the things that I am doing is so that you can live, from my belief system, a physically independent lifestyle at 120. So I think kind of nurturing those conversations with the internal self. And then just encouraging this growth mindset that that your mind is set up for your success. That we don't have limiting beliefs unless those limiting beliefs push us, motivate us, or something that we need. So if I'm saying to myself, I can't meditate, does that make me meditate because that is encouraging me? So I want to defeat that, and so now you can't tell me I can't do it. I'm gonna do it. Internal, like that internal dialogue, or is it I can't do meditation? It's too hard, and then I forget about it, and then suffer in life because I'm frustrated that I feel life is difficult and sitting in silence is too agitating.
Yeah, that definitely could be an issue for some people. So let me just ask you,
Well,
based
can
off
I slow
that.
you down a little bit? When you
Yeah,
say
sure.
like some people, what do you see in terms of maybe like resiliency in men and women? how do you see that men show up maybe in a resilient way, or maybe like that women show up in a resilient way too, that just is kind of not acknowledged?
Yeah, sure. I think men and women both can be equally resilient. Um, in the day we live in today, I mean, you have to be more resilient than ever because there's always, so many things coming against you, especially, people of color and women. There's all these attacks and people trying to put restrictions on things like that. So, I mean, you have to be resilient more so now because if you think about, times past, um, let's say women didn't have as many rights as they have today. There was a whole suffrage movement really based on making that issue correct, and in some ways it was very positive, and a lot has changed since times past. But men haven't really, outside of certain races, men really haven't had to be as resilient in recent history. And I'm speaking due to the fact of just us not really being in any major wars or any major conflicts to that degree. But you look in times past, I mean, countries have constantly been in wars and conflicts. So that alone causes more resiliency in the people because they're constantly having to fight for resources, territory, and things of that nature. So I think in today's modern society, we're so advanced and developed that we actually have less of a reason to be resilient. So I'll give you an example. We get more mad about small things than things that are actually important. So a person today may be mad that they missed the bus or that, they spilled some milk making breakfast. They'll take that issue and make it such a big deal that it ruins their whole day. Whereas in times past, people had bigger issues to focus on, as of like, what am I going to eat today? Where am I going to live? And how am I going to not get shot? So when you look at it from that perspective, I think that we are definitely a lot less resilient, but it doesn't mean that we can't tap into that resilient nature that we all have. So I kind of look at it like that.
The part that so earlier you kind of talked a little bit about the resiliency with men and women, and it connected it to war. And if it pushed them and motivated them, the suffering, if that pushes them and motivates them, then suffering is really a win-win, right? So if I'm going through a struggle as a female, if it pushes me to overcome that struggle because now I'm demonstrating how resilient I am, then really that struggle is a positive thing. So we don't
It can
have
be.
to, it can be. So the things that we go through, we don't necessarily need to think of them as it's a point of suffering, because if we go through the process and we grow in that process, it pushed us towards wellness, which means it wasn't suffering, although the mind will want you to convince you maybe initially that it was. So suffering really is a stepping stone towards a wellness plan, is one way to think of that idea. And I like the ideas that and the examples you gave in terms of women and men and the different experiences historically for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all a process. It's all a part of growing as a person, individual. I don't think I don't think mental wellness is something that you ever actually achieve. I think it's something that you have to constantly work at every day. So I try to just keep that perspective, and not to say that people today aren't resilient. There's a lot of people who have been through a lot of hardships and have gotten through that. But I'm speaking in terms of a whole society. We're so focused on things that aren't necessarily important in the grand scheme of things, just in our day-to-day lives, that sometimes we lose that perspective and we kind of get distracted in a sense. And I think that's why meditation is such a great tool, because it kind of brings you back into that mindset of just calmness and focus.
So I had a thought. When you are experiencing, let's say for our audience, if you are experiencing a moment, because I believe all this stuff fluctuates, if you are experiencing a moment and that moment is painful, if you sit with it and you reflect on it and you do whatever form of meditation that works for you, it can be helpful in the journey to get you through. Then you start to develop your meditation capacity, get stronger and stronger. And sometimes those little things like I ran out of gas, or I got a flat tire, or my kids are yelling and screaming too much, or my boyfriend broke up with me. Sometimes those things don't distract you because you've already started doing the practice of meditation and silencing the mind and controlling the thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great point. Definitely. So yeah, that was all the questions I had for today's episode. Anything you want to leave us with before we close out?
Yeah, let me read the benefits of a guided meditation.
Okay.
And what I wrote was, you can focus your thinking, you can develop a mental practice to train the mind. It is specific and goal directed, and it provides structure. It combines past perceptions and current perceptions, giving you control to make decisions. It maximizes negative thought patterns, that is judgment free. You feel inspired and motivated to make change because your perception makes it possible. It releases tensions and build up in the muscles. And so those were just some of the benefits of progressive meditation. And then what we will, of guided meditation. And then next week we will talk about progressive muscle relaxation, which is one of my favorites.
Awesome. All right. Definitely looking forward to it. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Make sure, if you have not already, like the video and share the video with someone who you would like to see this. And until next time, everyone, be safe and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wraps up another episode. I hope today's discussion provided clarity and tools you can use in your daily life. If you're ready to take the next step in the healing journey, I'd love to connect. Head over to my website to schedule a free 15-minute consultation. It is a great opportunity to ask questions and see how we can work together. And while you're there, download my complimentary workbook designed to help you reflect, grow, and move towards mental wellness, happiness, and success. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. The rhythm of healing, the OCTAVES Method. O is for observation, through stillness we find meditation and breath work that quiet the mind. In silence we listen, the answers are clear, awareness emerges, dissolving the fear. C is for compassion, for self and for all, embracing the good, the struggles, the fall. With kindness we grow, we nurture, we mend, learning to love ourselves as we extend. T is for therapy, a path we explore. Daily we practice unlocking the door. From journaling to mindfulness, healing begins. Each step is a victory as peace settles in. A is for animals and laughter so bright, like children at a play, their joy taking flight. With playfulness and movement, we rediscover the way to heal through the fun that we often delay. V is for victuals, nourishing and pure, detoxifying the body and keeping us sure. We choose what we eat with intention and grace, fueling our journey at our own pace. E is for exercise, where movement is free. We stretch and we bend in sweet harmony. Flexibility grows with choices we make. In strength and in stillness, our bodies awake. S is for socialize, where self-growth begins. Others reflect our triggers and the places within. Through relationships, our true selves we find, growing and healing with each tie that binds. The OCTAVES Method, where all behavior makes sense. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents. We just need to find the sense it presents.